All right, let's talk about one of the most intense and demanding tactics in all of football, man-to-man defending. This is a strategy that's all about pure individual responsibility. When it works, it's absolutely suffocating for the other team. But when it fails, oh, it can be a total disaster. So let's dive into why it's both a massive gamble and an incredibly powerful weapon. So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say man-to-man defending? Because it's a lot more than just chasing a player around the pitch. It's really a whole defensive philosophy. At its core, the idea is pretty simple. You've got your guy and your teammate has his. We're not talking about guarding a patch of grass here like you would in a zonal system. No, no, this is personal. Your one and only job is to become your opponent's shadow for the entire match, making sure they can't get the ball, can't get comfortable, and can't influence the game. It's aggressive, it's confrontational, and it's a pure test of who's better, you or him. But of course, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. The smartest coaches use man marking in really specific ways, changing it up based on who they're playing and what's happening in the game. Let's look at 3 key moments where you really see this tactic come to life. First up, you have the classic shadow job. This is like a surgical strike. The goal is to find the other team's best player. Their creative engine, maybe a playmaker on a team like Pep Guardiola's, and you assign one of your guys to basically erase him from the game. The marker's job is to be a complete and utter pest, sticking so close that the star player can't even get a touch of the ball, let alone turn and run the show. It's like you're making the other team play with 10 men. Second, you can use it as a team-wide pressing weapon. And this is where the intensity just goes through the roof. The entire team locks onto their nearest opponent, and you just smother the other team as they try to play out from the back. They have no time, no easy passes. It forces bad decisions and turnovers. Sometimes this is a super aggressive high press, like you see from Thiago Motta's teams. Or it might be a more patient press in the middle of the pitch, like Raffaele Palladino might set up. But the goal's always the same: create chaos and win the ball back. And third, you see it in that moment of pure chaos right after you lose the ball. Man marking brings instant order to that chaos. The rule is dead simple. The second the ball is lost, you find the closest opponent and you get on them. That immediate disciplined reaction can stop a counterattack before it even starts, and it gives the rest of your team those precious seconds they need to get back into their defensive shape. Okay, but just running hard isn't enough to make this work. It's all about discipline. For a man-marking system to be successful, there are 5 non-negotiable rules that every single player has to master. We're talking about staying close, having awareness of the play, communicating constantly, having rock-solid discipline, and knowing how and when to switch players. Let's break down exactly what each of these looks like on the field. So, the first principle, staying close. Sounds easy, right? Well, it's actually a real art form. You have to be in what I call the threat zone. Close enough to pounce and make a tackle the instant the ball comes, but not so tight that a clever attacker can just spin you and leave you for dead. Get too close, you get beaten. Get too far away, and you've given them all the time in the world. It's this constant, delicate little dance you have to do. Now, this is where the system gets really smart. You don't just blindly follow your assigned player wherever they go. The rule is simple, but it's absolutely crucial. The closer your guy is to the ball, the tighter you need to be on him. But if he drifts way over to the other side of the field, you can tuck in, help your teammates out, and clog up the dangerous spaces. Marcelo Bielsa's Uruguay team is a fantastic example of this. The players on the far side of the field will shift inside to create an overload, but they always stay goal side of their man, ready to sprint out if the ball gets switched. These next 2 principles are really all about the mental side of the game. Communication is, and I'm not exaggerating, the lifeblood of this system. You need constant talking about who's got who, when to switch, who's making a dangerous run. Without it, you get confusion, and that's exactly what top attackers live for. And hand in hand with that is discipline. The absolute #1 sin in man marking is ball watching. Getting so caught up in where the ball is that you forget about your own player for just a split second. You have to totally trust your teammates to do their jobs so you can focus only on yours. And finally, you have to deal with modern football. Attackers these days, they don't just stand still. They're constantly moving, swapping positions, trying to pull your defense apart. An old-school, rigid man-marking system would get absolutely shredded by that. That's why smart switching isn't just a good idea, it's essential. As 2 attackers cross paths, the defenders have to instantly communicate and pass them off to each other. A quick switch is all it takes to make sure everyone stays covered and no defender gets dragged way out of position. So, we get the principles. But you see how intense it is, right? It makes you wonder, why would a coach want to build their entire team around this? Well, to answer that, You really have to look at the massive rewards and weigh them against the potentially catastrophic risks. So when it works, the upsides are huge. For one, you can totally neutralize the other team's best player, something Carlo Ancelotti's teams have been masters of over the years. Two, you just choke the life out of their passing game. You take away all the easy options, forcing them to just launch risky long balls. That's a signature of Simone Inzaghi's super effective inner team. And all that pressure, it just forces mistakes. And finally, there's a real beauty in its simplicity. Every player has one clear job. No hesitation, no confusion. That all sounds pretty great, doesn't it? But this whole system is like walking a tightrope without a safety net. So what happens when just one person slips? The biggest weakness by far is how vulnerable it is to smart movement and rotations. This example from Gasparini's Atalanta shows it perfectly. Watch this. Sporting CP's attackers do a simple little rotation. There's a split second of miscommunication between the Atalanta defenders and boom, that's all it takes. A midfielder is wide open in a super dangerous spot, and the entire press is broken with just one pass. Another massive risk is that defenders naturally get dragged out of position. I mean, it's just part of the job. Look at this example from Vincent Kompany's Bayern Munich. The defender is forced to follow his man way up into midfield. And just look at the enormous gap that opens up in the back line. A clever team will use that player as bait, deliberately creating that massive runway for another attacker to run into. It's a classic tactical trap. And that brings us to the dangerous domino effect. Think of man marking like a chain. It's only as strong as its weakest link. We can see it here with Hansi Flick's Barcelona team. If just one player gets beaten one-on-one or loses track of their mark, there's usually no one there to cover for them. The whole structure just gets compromised, and suddenly the other team has a free run at your goal. A single individual mistake can cause the whole system to collapse. So what this all comes down to is the incredible burden it puts on every single player. Physically, you have to be an absolute machine to track a top-level opponent for 90 minutes. And mentally, you need almost perfect concentration. You can't switch off, not for a single second, because one little lapse could be the difference between winning the ball back and giving up a goal. Now, given all these pretty scary risks, a lot of coaches have come up with a really clever variation, a little tweak that gives them a much-needed safety net. Here's the trick. It's a calculated gamble. You intentionally decide to leave one of the other team's least dangerous players, almost always a center back, completely unmarked. By giving up pressure on that player, you free up one of your own guys to act as a spare defender, a libero at the back. And just like that, you have an extra body to cover for any mistakes, and you've got a numerical advantage right where you need it most. It's a tactic that coaches like Raffaele Palladino and Marcelo Bielsa have used brilliantly to get the best of both worlds, aggression and security. Which really leaves us with the big question from modern football. In a time where attackers are so fluid and rotations are so complex, is a pure man-to-man system just an outdated, high-risk gamble? Or is it still a vital weapon for any team that truly wants to be aggressive and impose its will on a game? It's something to think about. The next time you're watching a match, keep a close eye on those little individual battles happening all over the pitch, and you can decide for yourself.